Hello everyone, welcome back to our MEG-01 British Poetry lecture series. In the previous lecture, we studied William Wordsworth's theory of poetry, where emotions, common life, and simplicity were central ideas. In today's lecture, we will discuss Samuel Taylor Coleridge's theory of imagination, which is one of the most intellectually demanding but highly rewarding topic in MEG-01 syllabus. Here are some IGNOU frequently asked questions such as explain Coleridge's theories of imaginations, distinguish between primary and secondary imaginations, compare Wordsworth's and Coleridge's view on imaginations. This lecture will help you answer all such questions confidently. So without any further wait, let's start with the Coleridge as romantic poet and critic. Samuel Taylor Coleridge was not only a poet but also a philosopher and literary critic. Unlike Wordsworth, who emphasized emotions, Coleridge focused on the working of the human mind and the philosophical nature of imaginations, the creative power of poetry. His ideas are mainly found in Biographia Literaria, which was launched in 1817. This work is a cornerstone of romantic literary criticism. Let's discuss the Coleridge's concept of imagination. Coleridge believed that imagination is the central creative power of poetry. He did not treat imaginations as fancy, daydreaming, mere associations of ideas. Instead, he viewed imaginations as a dynamic, shaping, and unifying force. According to Coleridge, imagination gives unity to experience, order to chaos, meaning to perceptions. Let's discuss with the primary imaginations. Coleridge defines primary imaginations as the living power of prime agents of all human perceptions. Primary imaginations is universal, involuntary, shared by all human beings. It is the basic power through which we perceive the world, organize sensory experience. In simple terms, primary imaginations helps us see reality as reality. It is a passive but essential mental activity. Now let's discuss the secondary imagination. Secondary imagination is closely related to primary imaginations but operates at a higher creative level. Now let's discuss the Coleridge describe it as a repetitions of the primary imagination, but with consequences will. Secondary imagination is possessed by poets and artists. It is creative and intentional, dissolves and recreates reality. It transforms raw experience into artistic expression. This is the imagination that creates poetry. Now let's discuss the difference between primary and secondary imaginations. Primary imaginations like universal, involuntary, perspective. And in secondary imaginations, it is limited to poets, voluntary, creatives, and artistic. This distinction is extremely important for IGNOU exams, so you can mark it out. Now let's discuss the fancy versus imaginations. Coleridge makes a clear distinction between fancy and imagination. Fancy, it means mechanical, works by association, rearranges exciting ideas, has no creative power, and in imagination, organic, creative, unifies and transforms experience. Coleridge strongly argues that fancy is not imagination. This distinction is frequently asked in short note. Now let's discuss imagination as a unifying power. One of the Coleridge's most important ideas is that imagination unites opposites, harmonizes contradictions. For example, subject and object, emotion and thought, nature and mind. This makes poetry organic, not mechanical. Coleridge versus Wordsworth emphasizes emotions, focus on recollections, stresses simplicity, and Coleridge emphasizes imaginations, focus on philosophy and minds, stresses intellectually unity. So in exams, this comparison can fetch very high marks. Now let's discuss functions of poetry according to Coleridge. For Coleridge, poetry is not mere emotional expressions, is an act of creative imaginations, reveals deeper truth of reality. Poetry helps readers perceive unity in diversity, experience harmony. Now let's discuss the critical importance of Coleridge's theory. Coleridge's theory gives philosophical depth to romanticism, influenced later literary criticism, elevated imaginations to a central artistic principle. IGNOU examiners value clarity of explanations, not memorizations. Now let's discuss how to write a 20 marks answer for Coleridge if you got this question. So in the start, you have to write an introduction to Coleridge as a romantic poet, critic, and mention Biographia Literaria. It is very important. You have to mark it. Next, body. Explain concepts of imagination and primary imagination, secondary imaginations, fancy versus imagination. Use definitions and distinct clarity. Okay. Now, in the conclusion, highlights Coleridge's contributions to romantic literary theory. In the conclude, Coleridge's theory of imagination provides the philosophical backbone of romantic poetry, explains how poetry is created, distinguishes true creativity from mechanical imitations. Understanding this theory is essential for scrolling well in MEG-01. In the closing note, in the next lecture, we will move to British romantic poets individually, starting with Wordsworth's poem to proceed to Keats and Shelley, depending on your preference. Let me know in the comment.